yesterday's game happened, and I think everybody knows that whatever they drew up at the end of the game did not happen. Did not happen. Sophie Cunningham made an incredible read. The play wasn't great. And in the end, it is hilarious. Aaliyah Boston did a Thomas Bryant. If you guys don't remember, when LeBron James hit the shot to make him the all-time leading scorer.
Caitlin Clark just put the entire league on notice. We're talking about a buzzer beater that didn't just close out a game. It announced that this version of the Indiana Fever is something different. The second that ball left her hands, you already knew it was good. There's a level of confidence Caitlin carries every time she steps on that floor, and it's not the kind you develop over time, it's the kind you showed up with. From the moment she arrived in Indiana, people questioned whether her college dominance would hold up, whether the pace of the pro game would expose her, whether the physicality of WNBA defenders would change her. Night after night, game winner after game winner, she answers every single one of those questions without opening her mouth. This isn't a rookie still figuring things out. This is a player who walked into the league and immediately started rewriting what the WNBA looks like to the rest of the world. Arenas are selling out. Ratings are at record highs. The conversation around women's basketball has never taken up this much space in the culture. And standing right at the center of all of that is number 22, pulling up from distances that most professionals wouldn't even practice from. None of what she does out there is accidental. That's preparation colliding with pressure, and Caitlin Clark doesn't shrink in pressure. She gravitates toward it. The bigger the moment, the sharper she gets. That's what separates truly generational players from everyone else, and Indiana is watching one do it in real time. But here's where it gets really interesting, because what followed that final buzzer wasn't your typical post-game celebration. There's a clear difference between a team celebrating a basketball win and a team actively putting something on display. What went down after that shot hit completely different. Players weren't just going through the normal winning motions, there was a purpose to it. The energy in that moment extended well past the relief of getting a W in the standings. When you actually pay attention to the body language, to who was gravitating toward who, to the intensity behind those reactions, this wasn't just a group of women celebrating a hard-fought victory. This was a group of women communicating something to anyone paying close enough attention. In the WNBA, so much of the real messaging happens away from the actual game. It happens on social media, in sideline interactions, in the way players choose to publicly show up for each other when the cameras are still rolling. Moments like this carry weight that goes far beyond the final score. And if you've been following this Indiana Fever situation closely, you already know exactly what that weight is connected to. And that brings us to the question that the entire basketball community is now sitting with. Did we just watch the Indiana Fever locker room draw a line in the sand against their own coaching staff? Because that's what people are saying. That's the conversation flooding every comment section, every sports forum, every group chat full of WNBA fans right now. This isn't just drama for the sake of drama. When players on a professional roster start visibly rallying around each other in ways that seem pointed and intentional, that usually means something is brewing beneath the surface that the front office and coaching staff can't ignore. The relationship between a locker room and its coaches is one of the most fragile dynamics in all of professional sports, and when Caitlin Clark is involved, when she's the gravitational center of everything happening with this franchise, every single move gets amplified tenfold. What might be a minor internal tension on any other team becomes a national storyline when your most important player is the most talked about athlete in women's sports. That's the reality Indiana is navigating right now, and it is anything but simple.
A lot of people are taking the fact that they went rogue as almost like dissent against the coaches, dissent against the organization, that the players are turning on the coaches, the players aren't playing for Steph anymore, and this could be not further from the truth, or there could be truth into it. And I'll explain the two different situations, because there is nuance to this. There is absolutely some nuance to this entire conversation.
Let's get into exactly why this particular moment matters as much as it does. At the end of regulation against the Dallas Wings, the Indiana Fever had a play drawn up. The coaching staff had a specific design, a specific intention, and a specific player they wanted the ball going to in that moment. That's how professional basketball works. You get a timeout, you diagram something out, and every person on that floor is supposed to execute their assignment. That's the structure. That's the expectation. Except that's not what happened. Sophie Cunningham looked at the situation unfolding in front of her and made a split-second decision to completely abandon the designed play and go with what she was reading on the floor. And that improvised, off-script, against-the-game plan decision is the one that ended up working. The shot went up, the moment landed, and suddenly, Sophie Cunningham wasn't a player who went rogue. She was a hero. The kind of hero that gets mobbed by her teammates. The kind of hero that gets her moment plastered all over social media within minutes. What's significant here isn't just that it worked. It's that nobody on that roster even flinched at the fact that the design play got thrown out the window. Nobody looked toward the bench with hesitation. Nobody seemed concerned about what the coaching staff's reaction was going to be. The celebration was immediate, genuine, and completely unfiltered. And Caitlin Clark was right in the middle of all of it, matching that energy like she'd been waiting for exactly this kind of moment to unfold. That's not nothing. When the face of your franchise is that visibly locked in with a teammate who just went against the coach's call, that speaks to something deeper about the culture that's developing inside that locker room. Because here's what people keep glossing over when they talk about Caitlin Clark's impact on this team. It isn't just about her stat line. It's about the gravity she creates around everyone else. When a player of her caliber fully embraces a moment like what Sophie Cunningham just gave them, it sends a message to every other player on that roster. It says, your instincts are trusted here. It says this team runs on feel just as much as it runs on scheme. And when that message is being co-signed by the player who is quite literally putting this franchise on the map right now, it carries enormous weight in that locker room. The social media piece is also not something to wave off as just players being players online. In today's WNBA, social media is part of the game. It's where narratives get built, where fan bases rally, and where players communicate things that might be too pointed to say directly in a post-game press conference. When the entire roster turns Sophie's moment into a coordinated celebration online, that's intentional. That's a statement dressed up as enthusiasm. And the fact that it's all swirling around a team where Caitlin Clark is the undeniable center of attention means every layer of it gets examined under a microscope. Now here's where it gets complicated, because not everything is as straightforward as it looks on the surface. And anyone telling you this is a simple situation either hasn't thought it through or isn't being honest with you. There are genuinely two separate ways to look at what happened here, and both of them carry real merit depending on where you're standing.
I'm putting it out there right now. Not one player dislikes Stephanie White personally that is currently on this team. I can be almost certain of that. I can say that with 99% certainty. But again, I don't know if they dislike Chrissy Zides personally. She was the bad coach. And again, anyone who's been on a team knows sometimes you can like your coach and you can just... Sometimes you can like your coach as a person and you can just never want to play for them again. I've had plenty of coaches like that through my life where I'm like, I genuinely, like, I have nothing as a person, I just can't play for them anymore.
Before we go any further down this road, we need to pump the brakes and lay out some ground truth. Because without the proper foundation, this whole conversation becomes just another hot take that doesn't actually serve anybody. So let's establish what we actually know versus what people are spinning. First and most importantly, Stephanie White is not someone that the players on this roster have a personal problem with. That's not really up for debate. From everything that's come out publicly and from every read you can get on the internal dynamics of this team, the issue, if there even is one, is not about Stephanie White, the human being. It's not about her character. It's not about whether she treats people with respect in the building. By virtually all accounts, she does. And that distinction matters enormously, because the internet has a way of flattening these situations into villain narratives, and that's not what this is. Nobody is out here saying Stephanie White is a bad person. Nobody on that roster is walking into practice with animosity toward their head coach on a personal level. That's almost certainly not what's happening, and it would be irresponsible to frame it that way. What is more complicated And what anyone who has actually played competitive sports at any meaningful level already understands from lived experience is that you can deeply respect someone as a human being while simultaneously having real frustrations with them as a coach. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. They exist together all the time. In professional sports locker rooms, and pretending otherwise is just naive. A player can genuinely like their coach, enjoy their presence in the building, appreciate the way they communicate on a personal level, and still feel like the system isn't working, still feel like the rotations aren't right, still feel like the play calling in critical moments isn't putting the team in the best position to win. That tension is one of the oldest stories in sports, and it plays out on every level, from high school gyms to NBA arenas to WNBA courts. And when you're talking about a locker room that includes Caitlin Clark, a player who came into this league with an almost supernatural understanding of the game, a player who has seen what winning basketball looks like and knows what it feels like to operate within a system built specifically around her strengths, that tension has the potential to be amplified in ways that most coaching situations never have to deal with. Caitlin Clark is not just another talented player pushing back against a coach's system. She is the reason this franchise is relevant in a way it has never been before. She is the reason people are tuning in. She is the reason tickets are selling and cameras are showing up, and the national conversation keeps circling back to Indianapolis. That reality changes the power dynamic in ways that are genuinely unprecedented for a team like Indiana. And Stephanie White is navigating that whether she signed up for it or not. So when we're talking about friction, real or perceived, between this locker room and the coaching staff, we have to hold all of that context at the same time. It's not personal, but it is real. And the difference between those two things is exactly where this story lives.
We don't know what exactly type of coach Stephanie White is because we're not behind closed doors. If Stephanie White is a coach that encourages players to, or that is going to encourage players to make reads, even if it's against a set play, which I don't believe she is, but again, I don't know this because I'm only judging based on what we've seen publicly, then this isn't going to cause anything. If it turns out that Stephanie White's one of those coaches, that's like, it's my way or no way. And people are saying, oh, Austin Kelly drew it up. Yes, but like, who hired Austin Kelly and gave him that like role? That's Stephanie White okaying it all. If it's a coach's way or no way, and there's tons of coaches like that, by the way. There's tons of good coaches that are like that.
Here's where the conversation shifts into territory that a lot of people aren't equipped to have, because this isn't just about one broken play or one viral celebration. This goes straight to the heart of coaching philosophy. And there are genuinely two schools of thought in basketball that have both produced championships and both produced disasters depending on execution. There is a very real and very legitimate style of coaching that operates on total system commitment. No freelancing, no improvisation, no individual reads that deviate from the called play, regardless of what the defense is giving you. The coach sees the game from a higher vantage point, designs the system with all 5 players in mind, and demands that every single person on the floor trusts that structure completely, even when their instincts are screaming something different at them in the moment. And the reason that philosophy exists isn't because those coaches are control freaks or because they don't trust their players' basketball IQ. The reason it exists is actually deeply logical when you break it down. There's a story that circulates in basketball circles about a coach at a preseason camp who pulled a player aside after he made a decision mid-play that was technically the right basketball read. The defense gave him something and he took it, but it wasn't what was called. And the coach sat him down and walked him through exactly why that was still a problem. He told that player that he understood the decision made sense in isolation. He told him the read was good. But then he explained that the moment one player starts operating on their own instincts instead of the called play, the other 4 people on the floor are running something completely different. They're executing the actual design. They're setting screens for a play that's no longer happening. They're cutting to spaces that are now occupied. The whole system breaks down, Not because one person made a bad decision, but because one person made a different decision. And that's the distinction that separates system basketball from instinct basketball at the highest level. That philosophy has a championship pedigree you cannot argue with. Greg Popovich built one of the most decorated dynasties in NBA history on exactly that foundation. The San Antonio system was so deeply ingrained that players who came from completely different backgrounds and completely different styles of play transformed themselves to fit it, and they won because of it. Phil Jackson's triangle offense operated on the same principle. The triangle only works when all 5 players are reading the same cues, making the same movements, and trusting them. Geometry of the system over their own individual instincts. It's not a coincidence that both of those coaches are considered among the greatest to ever do it. The system works, but only under one very specific condition. Players have to genuinely believe at a core level that what the coach is drawing up is more valuable than what their own eyes are telling them in the moment. That belief has to be total. It cannot be halfway. The second a player starts privately questioning whether the system is actually better than their read, the whole thing starts to crack. And the longer that crack goes unaddressed, the wider it gets. That's exactly what makes what we just watched in Indiana so telling. Because when Sophie Cunningham abandoned the designed play and the entire roster responded the way they did, with that immediate, enthusiastic, publicly displayed celebration, what they were really showing the world is that the belief in the system isn't there right now. Not fully. Maybe not even close to fully. And with Caitlin Clark leading that charge in energy and visibility, the message landed louder than anyone in that coaching staff probably wanted it to. She is too prominent, too watched, and too central to this franchise's identity for her reaction in that moment to go unanalyzed. When the most important player on your roster is that visibly energized by a teammate going off script, it raises a question that Stephanie White and her entire staff are going to have to answer, not for the media, but for themselves.
He was like, look, I know, I was trying to explain, I was like, look, what you did was right, but that's not the point. He's like, it's literally, if people just start going rogue and making reads, the offense that he wanted to run didn't work. And it was like, it's as long as everybody is making reads, he's like, if you do this, then 4 other people have to be on the same page, and that's not the case. There are coaches that have different philosophies. There are really good coaches that are different philosophies. Again, I play with some unbelievable coaches that have the philosophy of it's my way or no way.
Now put yourself in Stephanie White's shoes for a second, because her situation is genuinely one of the more complicated positions any coach in the WNBA has been in recently, and it doesn't get nearly enough nuanced discussion. She didn't walk into Indiana with some cold, authoritarian reputation. That's not who she is, and that's not how she was received when she took this job. Stephanie White built her name in this league as someone players want to play for, someone who invests in relationships, someone who makes players feel seen as human beings first and athletes second. That relational quality is real. It's documented, and it's genuinely why people around the league have respected her as a coach. She has a warmth to her coaching identity that a lot of people in her position simply don't have. And that's not a small thing when you're trying to build trust inside a professional locker room. But here's where the complexity lives. Because Stephanie White also came into Indiana with a vision, a structured offensive vision. A system that has specific rules, specific spacing principles, specific reads that she wants executed the way she diagrams them. And on paper, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Having a defined offensive identity is what separates organized professional basketball from 5 people just improvising on a court together. The problem isn't that she has a system. The problem is what happens when that system meets real game results and the numbers don't cooperate. Because you can sell a roster on a philosophy when things are clicking. You can ask players to trust the process when the process is visibly working. But when the results start coming back underwhelming, and the statistics start telling a story that contradicts the vision, that's when even the most loyal players start having quiet conversations they wouldn't have otherwise. And the results right now are genuinely hard to defend. The Indiana Fever are sitting 9th in offensive rating across the league. 9th. Let that marinate for a second, because that number doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists in the context of who is actually on this roster. You have Caitlin Clark running the point. Caitlin Clark, the player who single-handedly shifted the cultural footprint of women's basketball, who averaged numbers in college that nobody had ever seen before, who came into the WNBA and immediately proved that her game translated. You have Aaliyah Boston operating in the paint, one of the most fundamentally sound and versatile big players in the league. You have Kelsey Mitchell giving you secondary scoring punch that most teams in this league would build their offense around if she was their best option. That is not a 9th place offensive talent level. That is nowhere close to a 9th place offensive talent level. That's a top 3, top 4 conversation waiting to happen if everything is functioning the way it should be. When that kind of gap opens up between the talent on paper and the production on the floor, there is only one place the questions eventually land, and that's on the system and the people designing it. Players at this level are sophisticated. Caitlin Clark is one of the most basketball-intelligent players the sport has ever produced. She sees the floor at a level that very few people in the history of the game have been able to match. When someone with that kind of vision is operating inside a structure that's producing 9th place offensive efficiency, you better believe she feels it every single possession. She knows when a play design is putting her in a worse position than where her instincts would take her. She knows when the spacing is off. She knows when the reads being called from the sideline aren't matching what the defense is actually giving. And the more that disconnect persists, the harder it becomes for any player, let alone the most watched player in women's sports, to fully commit to the called play over what her own eyes are telling her. That erosion of trust in the system isn't a character flaw. It's a natural human response to evidence. And right now, the evidence is sitting at 9th place.
Caitlin Clark, I'd say, is not expecting to be subbed out of this possession. At this stage, Caitlin Clark is locking in, thinking, fuck this, I gotta get a stop. Like, she didn't miss a high 5. Like, I don't think there's anything in this. People are looking too far into this. But from a team perspective, in one of the high points of the season, if all of a sudden it turns out that the Indiana Fever or the coaches and the coaching staff are upset that they made a game-winning play, that's when you can lose a locker room.
Here's the part of this story that should have Indiana's front office genuinely losing sleep, and it connects directly back to Caitlin Clark, because everything with this franchise connects back to Caitlin Clark at this point. That's just the reality of what she's built here. But buried underneath all the highlight plays and the record-breaking moments and the sold-out arenas is a detail that reveals something deeply uncomfortable about how this team is being managed. Justin Pard has not played a single minute this season. Not one. 0. And before you shrug that off as a roster decision that doesn't involve Caitlin Clark, think about what it means for the environment she has to compete in every single day. Caitlin Clark did not come to Indiana to be part of a poorly managed situation. She came here to win. She came here to build something. She came here because this was the opportunity in front of her, and from day one, she poured everything she had into making this franchise matter on a national level. And she succeeded at that in ways that exceeded even the most optimistic projections. Arenas that used to be half full are now packed. Broadcasts that used to be afterthoughts are now appointment television. The Indiana Fever went from a franchise people acknowledged existed to a franchise people genuinely follow, debate, and invest in emotionally. Caitlin Clark did that. She carried that on her back and she made it look natural. So when the organizations surrounding her start showing signs of dysfunction, real, documented, statistically supported dysfunction, it reflects on her in a way that isn't fair, but is absolutely unavoidable. She is the face. When the face is attached to a body that isn't functioning right, people notice. And Caitlin Clark notices most of all. Development contracts in the WNBA are not guaranteed playing time situations. Everybody understands that. When you sign a player to that kind of deal, the expectation on both sides is that minutes are earned, not handed over. But here's what makes this particular situation impossible to explain away with standard roster logic. Every single other player currently on a development contract in this league has gotten on the floor at some point this season. Every one of them. Even in the lowest leverage situations, even in blowouts where the game was decided before halftime, those players have seen real minutes. Because that's what the contract is literally designed to produce. You bring someone in on a development deal because you want to evaluate them under live game conditions. You want to see how they handle real pressure. You want to give them something to grow with. That's not a favor. That's the entire point of the structure. So when one specific player under that contract type hasn't gotten a single second of floor time, while every comparable player around the league has gotten something, that stops being a basketball decision and starts being something else entirely. And Caitlin Clark, who sees everything that happens inside that organization with a level of awareness that most people underestimate, is not blind to that. This is a woman who tracked every single statistical inefficiency in the Fever's offensive system and felt every one of them in her body on the court. You think she doesn't notice when a teammate who deserves an opportunity isn't getting one in a way that defies every established pattern? Caitlin Clark is one of the most detail-oriented, competitive minds in the sport right now. The small things don't escape her attention. They fuel her. They inform how she understands her environment. And when the environment starts showing cracks, real cracks, not manufactured drama, she feels those cracks differently than anyone else on the roster because she has more invested in this franchise turning into something special than anyone else wearing that uniform. That's what makes the Justin Pard situation matter beyond just the roster management conversation. It's a signal. It's the kind of signal that a player like Caitlin Clark picks up on and files away somewhere in her competitive brain. Players talk within that locker room. They see who's getting opportunities and who isn't. They form quiet opinions about how decisions are being made and whether those decisions are actually in service of the team winning or whether something else is driving them. And in a locker room where Caitlin Clark has become the undeniable heartbeat, where her energy sets the temperature for everything else, those quiet opinions don't stay quiet indefinitely. She doesn't have to say a word publicly for her perspective to be felt by every person in that building. Her presence alone amplifies everything. The front office built this entire franchise identity around what Caitlin Clark represents. And right now, the operational decisions being made around her are not matching the magnitude of what she's given this organization. That disconnect is not sustainable. And somebody in Indianapolis needs to recognize that before it becomes a much bigger story than it already is.
The WNBA All-Star uniforms to have the USA 250 patch should have thought that through, considering no WNBA players would have been free 250 years ago. The majority wouldn't even have had freedom 100 years ago.
Look, Caitlin Clark is literally out here saving a whole league, bringing eyeballs, bringing money, bringing people who never cared about women's basketball a day in their life. So it's wild that while she's doing all that heavy lifting, the WNBA somehow found a way to fumble the simplest thing imaginable. Every other major sports organization in the country threw on a small patch, just a patch, to mark 250 years of the nation existing. No drama, no debate, just done. The WNBA turned it into a whole situation somehow.
WNBA is planning to have its biggest stars wear a USA 250 patch during this year's All-Star game, according to multiple people familiar with the plans. joining a handful of other leagues committed to publicly commemorating the 250th anniversary of the United States. The red, white, and blue patches are unveiled earlier this year by Fanatics in partnership with President Donald Trump. The league will have the patch added to the jerseys during its All-Star game on July 25th in Chicago.
So here's the actual story. Early this year, Fanatics linked up with the Trump administration to roll out this USA 250 patch. Basically a commemorative design celebrating 250 years since the Declaration of Independence dropped. Red, white, and blue, nothing crazy on it. The NBA was in, the NFL was in, MLB, UFC, NASCAR. Everybody got on board without making it a thing. Just slapped it on and kept it moving. No political statement, no hidden agenda, just an anniversary patch. Simple. The WNBA, though, they weren't part of that original announcement back in January.
A WNBA spokesperson sent to Sportico the following statement, quote, "Like other major sports leagues, we are exploring how to best commemorate the country's 250th anniversary. Nothing has been finalized."
The second word got out about the patch, some WNBA players went straight to social media to air out their grievances. And this is exactly the kind of thing that keeps the league from growing the way it could be. Leading the noise was Indiana Fever reserve Brianna Turner. And look, if that name doesn't ring a bell, that's kind of the point. She's a bench player who doesn't see much floor time, which makes it even wilder that she's out here generating headlines for the wrong reasons instead of letting her game do the talking. Turner hopped on X and posted what might be one of the most historically short-sighted takes of the entire year. She basically said the WNBA All-Star uniform shouldn't have featured the USA 250 patch because of where things stood for people 250 years ago and even 100 years ago. Just sit with that for a second. The idea that a country's entire 250-year journey, or all the growth, all the change, all the progress, somehow doesn't deserve a 2-inch patch on a jersey is a reach that's hard to even follow. And this is the energy the WNBA is out here generating, while Caitlin Clark is literally doing everything she can to bring this league to a new level. The contrast couldn't be more obvious.
We are the most elite female athletes. 250 years ago, we would have been brothers or in working all day. Be serious right now. Yes, I know this was probably a financial decision at the end of the day.
Turner kept the train rolling though, firing off another post doubling down even harder. She went on about how as elite athletes, they would have had zero freedom 250 years ago, basically using that argument to reject the entire concept of the patch. But here's where it gets really interesting. In the same breath, she turned around and said she already knew this was probably just a money move at the end of the day. She said it herself, she knew it was business. She understood the reality of what it was, and still decided to go full theatrical about it anyway. That kind of self-awareness mixed with that kind of reaction is honestly hard to wrap your head around. And the reason this matters so much goes straight back to Caitlin Clark. Because right now, Clark is the biggest thing happening in women's basketball, arguably in women's sports period. She is the reason casual fans are buying tickets. She is the reason broadcast deals look different. She is the reason little girls are picking up basketballs. The league is riding a genuine wave right now, largely because of what she brings every single time she steps on the floor. So when the public saw these posts circulating, the backlash came quick and it came loud, because people who just discovered this league through Clark don't want to watch it burn its own momentum down over a commemorative patch that every other league in the country put on without a second thought. And that right there is exactly why people are starting to ask a question that nobody really wants to say out loud, but everybody is thinking, how long is Caitlin Clark actually going to put up with this? Because at some point enough is enough, and we might be closer to that point than the WNBA wants to admit. Think about what Clark has done for this league in an incredibly short amount of time. Before she arrived, the WNBA was surviving. It wasn't thriving, it wasn't dominating headlines, it wasn't pulling the kind of numbers that make executives lose sleep trying to figure out how to capitalize. It was just existing. And then Caitlin Clark walked in and flipped the entire table. Attendance, records that had been sitting untouched for years got shattered almost immediately. Television ratings climbed to places the league hadn't seen in over 2 decades. Her jersey became one of the best selling in the entire league overnight. Arenas that used to be half empty on a good night were suddenly sold out weeks in advance, with people on waiting lists just hoping for a chance to get in the door. That is not normal. That does not happen by accident. That is one person carrying an entire ecosystem on her back and somehow making it look effortless. So when you see drama like this patch situation unfolding, with her own teammates, players, and her own locker room on the Indiana Fever, publicly going out of their way to create controversy that reflects on the whole team, the whole league, and by extension on everything Clark is trying to build. You have to wonder how long someone with her options is going to stay patient, because Caitlin Clark has options, real ones, options that most WNBA players could never even dream about. She is not trapped in this situation, she is choosing to be here, and that choice could change. The overseas money has always been a conversation in women's basketball. Players have been leaving to play in Europe and internationally for years because the pay structure simply made more financial sense. Clark, because of her NIL deals, her endorsements, her partnership with Nike, and her overall marketability, has more leverage than any women's basketball player in recent memory. She doesn't need the WNBA the way the WNBA needs her. That dynamic is completely flipped from what the league is used to dealing with. Typically, the league holds all the cards. With Clark, she is the card, she is the whole deck, and the league knows it, which makes it even more baffling to watch situations like this go unaddressed. Because here's the thing, the drama never seems to stop swirling around her. It started almost the moment she was drafted. There were hard fouls that looked like more than just hard fouls. There were moments on the court that raised eyebrows across the entire sports world. There were comments made, both on and off the record, by players across the league that ranged from dismissive to something that felt a lot more pointed. And through all of it, Clark kept her head down. She kept showing up, she kept performing, she kept growing her game and growing the league's audience at the same time. She absorbed all of that friction and just kept moving forward, which honestly showed a level of mental toughness that deserves more credit than it gets. But mental toughness has a ceiling, and every time the environment around her produces another moment like this, another controversy, another distraction, another situation where her teammates are out here making noise about things that push new fans away, that ceiling gets a little lower. The people who came to women's basketball because of Caitlin Clark are not the same people who were already there. They don't have years of loyalty built up to the league. They came for her specifically. They follow her specifically, and if she ever decided to step away, whether that means leaving the Fever for a different situation, taking her talents overseas for a season, or stepping back from the WNBA altogether to focus on other ventures, those fans follow her out the door. Every single one of them. The Indiana Fever specifically needs to be paying very close attention to what the environment around their franchise looks like right now. Clark is the reason that franchise matters on a national scale at this moment in time. She is the reason their games are broadcast on networks that weren't looking at them before. She is the reason kids in Indiana and across the entire country are wearing Fever gear. You do not let that environment get so toxic, so distracted, so consistently caught up in off-court nonsense that the person making all of that possible starts to quietly weigh her option. Organizations that make that mistake don't get second chances. By the time you realize what you had, it's already walking out the door. And the WNBA as a whole should be equally worried, because the league's growth right now is not evenly distributed. It is concentrated. It is sitting almost entirely on the shoulders of one 20-something woman from Iowa who plays basketball with a joy and a skill level that makes people stop what they're doing and pay attention. There is no version of this where the WNBA continues its current growth trajectory without Caitlin Clark fully bought in and engaged. None. The math does not work. The TV deals don't hold. The sponsors don't stay. The casual fans don't stick around. All of it requires her continued presence and continued investment in this league. So every time something like this patch situation bubbles up, every time drama finds its way back into the conversation, every time the league creates an environment that makes it harder for her and easier for the noise, they are gambling with the most valuable asset women's professional basketball has ever had. And the wildest part is it doesn't have to be this way. Clark has never asked for anything except to play basketball at the highest level and compete. That's it. That's all she's ever brought to the table. And somehow that keeps getting complicated by everything happening around her. The WNBA is at a crossroads right now, whether it wants to admit it or not. It can get out of its own way, protect its momentum, and build something real around the generational talent it lucked into having. Or it can keep letting the outside noise, the internal drama, and the self-inflicted controversies chip away at the foundation until one day Caitlin Clark decides her piece is worth more than the chaos, and she finds somewhere else to be great. That day might be further away than people think, but it might also be a lot closer than the league is comfortable with, and by the time they feel it, it'll already be too late.